Can I ask a provocative question?
No, please. How do you define work wife, work husband, work spouse? And he was like, are you pregnant? Which my own husband hadn't figured out yet.
Hey everyone, it's Audie, and I've got another special episode of The Assignment for you. I was at the podcast festival known as On Air Fest. That was in Brooklyn just last week. And for this, I knew I wanted to bring along a friend because we're going to talk about work spouses. And mine, for a very long time, was Ari Shapiro of NPR. So we talk about our careers, media, of course, what makes for a good work spouse. It was a fun conversation, so stick with us.
Audie Cornish and Ari Shapiro. Come on out. Come on out.
Okay, so here's the deal. Back in January, I asked Ari to come on The Assignment because, honestly, January was a lot, y'all. And I needed somebody that I could have a conversation with about the stories I was missing, right? These like cultural stories that I wanted to talk about. And we called it Engagement Party.
And we had a reference point because for all the years that Audie and I were All Things Considered hosts together, you heard us on the radio being very serious. And during the 8-minute segment about Syria, when our mics are off, we would cackle about the latest thing that we had found on Reddit or on Instagram or whatever was bubbling up in the culture. And we never really got to laugh like that with each other and finish each other's sentences on the radio in quite that way.
No.
So that was kind of the goal of the engagement party.
Yeah, we're engaged, folks, finally. There's a lot of moms out there who were
Don't tell our
very
husbands.
excited for me. I have to tell them, I don't think it's going to work out the way you like. So the reason why I wanted to talk to Ari here at On Air Fest is because, first of all, I've been here a couple times, and I love you guys. It's a fantastic crowd. And second, I think that he's just exited from NPR just a few months ago. I did it like
4 years ago?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, which as it turns out in cable news time is actually 25 years. It's been a lot of things. And so we wanted to talk about this kind of, what it means to pivot and what it means to like collaborate.
I think the moment we are in is so overwhelmingly defined by transformation.
Yeah.
And yet, when I look back at our career in journalism, I think this era of journalism has been for a few decades. Oh, wow. Okay, wait. That was us in 2018 at
Oh my
NPR.
God.
And
Yeah.
here's us just last month. And I have to say, I think I'm looking a bit more Andersonian.
Distinguished. The thing is, when you were at a place like NPR, and this is related, there was a little bit of cosplaying as the previous generation
Yeah.
of anchors, right? You couldn't
Trying to sound like Robert Siegel or
trying
Susan
to sound like
Stamberg.
Susan Stamberg. You were mentored by Nina Totenberg.
Totenberg.
I was mentored by Robert Siegel against his will. And it really meant that you were constantly, instead of trying to be yourself, which that generation got to do when they started in the 70s, we were trying to be them, which is why we weren't cracking those jokes on air, right? Because they didn't do it, and so we didn't do it. And I'm wondering, as you became, I left before you, but
Yeah.
you were there long enough to become the distinguished host, right?
I saw over the years that I was at NPR, both NPR and the media landscape more broadly transform into a place where first, there were fewer barriers to entry.
Yes.
And second, as a result, there were more voices in the mix.
That's when you all entered the chat.
Yeah. I remember the moment that Robert Krulwich and Jad Abumrad created Radiolab.
Exactly.
And it was like, oh, that's a different way to sound doing audio storytelling.
Yes.
And then that was the different way to sound until one day 1,000 different voices popped up, each one attracting different audiences, each one inventing different ways to sound. And as somebody who was in the kind of ivory tower of NPR, I feel like that gave me a little more freedom, and I wonder whether you felt this way too, to be myself and to sound less like what I thought an NPR host should sound like and more just sound like Ari Shapiro, whatever that
Yeah.
might mean.
I think I felt the opposite. I felt the restrictions of it more acutely because I was looking around and being like, guys, there's like a tsunami out there of content and people and talent, and they're doing things differently, and we should be open to that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because now that I'm in television, I'm in a way watching the same thing happen. Where,
How so?
Well, back during NPR days, people would be like, podcast? who listens to that?
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, that's not ever going to be as big as what we do. And now with TV, it's the same thing. They're like, a tick and a talk? Like, what does that mean? Like, what will the sets look like? What will the lighting look like? And then I go on and like a 12-year-old has a podcast, right? And I'm like, I think you guys need to like think about this a little differently. So in a way, I feel there's a little bit of Back to the Future
Yeah.
for me.
I started making journalism before social media existed.
Yes.
But I remember a moment when I was in coastal Turkey covering the Syrian refugee crisis.
As one is wont to do.
As one is wont to do. At this point in my life, I was a foreign correspondent. London was my home base, but I traveled the world. And I remember I posted on Instagram about Syrian refugees in Izmir waiting to go to Europe. And somebody in the comments said, "Why are they going to Europe?" And in that moment, I realized that Instagram was not a place that I channeled people to get the real news from the radio, that wherever I was reaching people was how they were
Was
getting
it?
the news.
Yeah.
And so 10 years later, I did this project where I went from Senegal to Morocco to Spain, connecting the dots from climate change to global migration to political extremism. And as we designed the project, we made it a project that was on podcasts and on the radio and on socials and interactive on digital, and all of those places were the destination.
Yeah.
They weren't drivers to the ultimate product.
And I think it's great because we were in the business long enough to think maybe we'd be the last people in the business,
Yeah.
right? Like what young people were going to do radio.
Can I ask a provocative question?
No, please.
How many pivots to video can you count in our career?
For the record, I was just in a PowerPoint yesterday about this.
Because there was
they were like,
Periscope.
yep, exactly.
There was Periscope. There was
Periscope.
Facebook Live. There was, of course, TikTok.
I did a Facebook talk show.
Oh, I completely forgot about
Yep,
that.
yep.
Wow, that's a throwback. You did.
It is. It is. It's in the
But this one
archive somewhere.
feels different.
What feels different?
This pivot to video.
It's not a pivot. I mean, we're seeing people like Derek Thompson, a writer online, talking about everything is TV now, meaning everything is a scroll with entertainment and people who you don't know telling you things and performing for you, which was not the promise of social media.
Right. And you look at podcasts, which are also now becoming television.
So I'm hoping that there's an addendum to that, which is that, yes, maybe social's turning into television, but guess what? Television is turning into radio. Because what is everybody doing but a video podcast?
And television is also turning into radio because Netflix is designing shows for people to watch while they're doing the dishes and getting their kids ready for school and doing a million other things. They are making TV shows to be listened to even if the video is on in the background, just as now we are making podcasts that have video that can be on in the background.
Okay, but are we? Do you really think so? I feel like when I'm making the show, I still go by the old adage, you know, a producer who told us this a million years ago, you want to make people stop and look at the radio. You're not making it for them to fold the laundry to.
Right. You want to create the driveway moment. You want to create the moment that makes people say, oh, wait. And yet, I've never known of an audio clip to go viral.
I do think people listen to audio and watch video podcasts because they want to spend time with people that
They want, to borrow a phrase,
parasocial.
a good hang.
They want a good hang. When we did Engagement Party, it was supposed to be for fun.
It was fun. I had fun.
And then this guy had to write a Substack about it.
Everyone's on Substack. I'm no exception.
Except for me. And in the
You had a
Substack,
daily
what
show.
was the title?
Reunited with my work wife.
I was really touched by this. I was telling him usually people just say like that, say stuff about you like that, like in your funeral. And so I felt like I was like here, you know what I mean? Like someone identifying what makes your relationship work. How do you define work wife, work husband, work spouse?
I can walk into your office, could back when we had offices next to each other, close the door, and sigh or roll my eyes. And you can transcribe that sigh or eye roll into a 5-paragraph essay without
Yeah.
my having to say a word. How do you define work spouse?
I actually went to look it up. Some of it came into the lexicon, as all good things do, through an Atlantic essay. And just the idea, it sort of has its roots in when women entered the workplace. And it started out with the sort of like, the secretary was your work spouse. But the idea was it was rooted in those kind of gender politics.
Yeah.
Now it's much more neutral, but every once in a while, like when I was prepping for this, I went onto Reddit and TikTok, and there were all these TikToks with people who were like, I met the work wife. He didn't
Oh,
tell
no,
me she was
really?
hot, you know? And I'm like,
That's terrible.
it's not how it went for me, but
Can I tell you a specific memory of our work marriage?
okay.
Early in the time that we spent hosting All Things Considered together, we both went through a phase where we showed up to work with mason jar salads for lunch.
I remember our mason jar salad
And we
face.
would compare our mason jar. Oh, yours has walnuts and cheddar and apples. Mine has feta and tomato and cucumbers. And then I think we might have even posted on Twitter whose mason jar salad was
It was
better.
the most NPR thing you could
was
do.
very-
Like, the comments were like, y'all, this is not it. I will tell you the thing for me, this is more personal. Ari, one day when we were in the studio, and I walked through the control room, and I came back to sit down, and like the control room can't always hear you. Sometimes we would cover the mic.
Push the cough button.
And he was like, are you pregnant? Do you remember that?
No.
Which my own husband hadn't figured out yet. And then, and you were like, I don't think you can wear those dresses if that's the
What?
situation. And I
Did
was
I
like,
really say that? I'm
Yes.
embarrassed at myself. That is, do not say that in the workplace to anyone, work spouse or no.
No,
Oh my God.
but you could tell, like you could figure it out. I was
knew
not
that,
showing.
I knew that it had been a process that you were
Yes,
working
that's
towards.
true.
Yeah. And now you have two beautiful children.
I do.
Two lovely boys. Do you have a favorite work husband, work wife example in the real world, in public, of like larger than life figures?
I know. You know, it's in a way, I always start out thinking about work spouses, and in popular culture, it's a little bit Jim and Pam. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like there's supposed
yeah.
to be an undercurrent of sexual tension there, which I think is not the point.
Right.
It is about creative collaboration. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the fact that they don't have to see you brushing your teeth and like doing all the things you
Truly.
do at home with your spouse. And so I end up looking to like creative partnerships, of which my current favorite are probably Ryan Coogler and Michael Bay Jordan.
Incredible.
Yeah, who I just think like everything they do, you can tell they have a shared language.
I was thinking about the two of them. I was also thinking about Emma Stone and Yorgos Lanthimos.
Yes.
You often see this kind of star and director work spouse partnership, but I wonder if that falls under the artist and muse category. Because there's inevitably a power hierarchy, right? Where the director is telling the star what to do, and the star
No, I don't think
is...
so, because that's what makes the partnership when it supersedes that. Like, it doesn't work without Emma Stone.
Oh, totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, so I don't know.
But also Emma Stone is sort of like the inspiration for Yorgos Lanthimos. I mean, it's true that
Are you saying
cannot
that
imagine...
just like as a gender thing, though? You know what I mean? Like,
No, I would say the same thing
muse
about
has
Ryan
those
Coogler and Michael B.
connotations.
Jordan. I think like this is a man who is embodying the vision of the director who has the overarching view of what these films are going to be. Okay, let's take an example that has no hierarchy.
Okay.
Amy Poehler and Tina Fey.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
There was a clip of them on Seth Meyers where they said to Seth, and I was like, yes, this is what a work spouse is. We could talk about you in front of your face, and you would not know that we were talking about you. I was like, yes, that's what that is.
100%.
We can talk about people in front of them and they don't really understand.
Gotcha.
Like, do you know what I mean?
You know what Fred's doing? Like,
I know,
okay.
isn't it? And he just
Hey, Fred.
Hey.
Well, the flip side is that we went through a phase. It was prior to the Awakening. I feel it was like 2017, 2018. But we reached a point where I was like, I feel like when I talk to the staff, there's something about the way I deliver things that they receive
Oh, this was really interesting.
in a way that was like sort of overly sensitive. And at the time, there were some things in the news where people were talking about black women and how they were perceived in the workplace. And I was acutely aware that there were very few hosts of color. The people who had the job next to me and around me were people like Robert Siegel. And so I was not perceived as a person who needed to be listened to. It was a little bit like, okay, yeah, you know, we're the same age, so it doesn't matter. And so we started doing a thing. Do you want to explain?
You would say something in a meeting, and I would later say the same thing in the meeting. Is this what you're talking
Yes.
about? And we would pay attention to how people responded differently to you saying it or me saying it. This was a really educational experience for me.
There were some things that I just had you say. Like, we would talk about it in the studio, and then I'd be like, this thing's going on, we need to fix it. Can you say it?
Yeah.
And for some reason, they were very like, Ari. Like, it's
For
okay.
some reason,
Yeah.
air quotes. What could that reason possibly be?
But did you feel the difference? Like, did you actually...
I felt like you opened my eyes to something that the country had its eyes opened to a few years later. And the fact that we could have not only silly conversations about our mason jar salad, but also about trying to get pregnant, or about the way black women and white gay men are treated differently in the same workplace, was really important to me. And
Yeah.
it's great to have a friend, but it's also great to have somebody who can say, hey, you might not be noticing this, so let me point it out to you, and I can hear it without defensiveness or feeling like I have to immediately
Yeah.
fix it, and just truly hear it from a friend in the workplace.
Which I'm not the kind of person who uses a term like ally. You know, that became more popular after. But to his point, there were people that I had moments with where I said, hey, I don't think you understand how X is coming off, or you may not realize what this means when I do it. And they really were defensive, upset, telling me it was in my head. And you never did that. You just literally received it, and then we played it out, and then we cackled about it.
Well, I mean, I
basically.
don't know if I ever said this explicitly, but let me say it now in front of all of these people. Having been friends with you for so many years before I became a host, coming into All Things Considered with you there, with you, to use a cliche phrase, holding space for me, with you saying, here, let me show you how it's done, not in an older generation
Yeah.
mentorship way, but in a, this is a place where I will make sure you feel welcome, was huge, was so meaningful, was so moving. It defined my 10 years on All Things Considered and set me on a path that determined the kind of host I
Yeah.
wound up being.
Because I just want to be clear, there have been whole decades where I've been jealous of Ari. Like, I don't
I
want
didn't
you.
know that.
Yes, you did. Everyone knows this. Like, let's think of, you all have done it, okay? You looked at someone else's podcast and you were like, why do they have so many downloads? Like, you just feel sometimes like, I'm behind. I'm not good at this thing. I don't know how to make ideas that people care about. Who am I to even do something? You like have all of these doubts, and you were always, he's super fast.
I'm going to quote the person I quote more than anyone else in the world, the performer Taylor Mack, who once said, comparison is violence.
Damn.
Having discussed work spouses,
Okay.
shall we go on to an actual spouse?
Let's go to an actual
Okay.
spouse.
For as long as I've been a journalist, my beloved husband, actually, tomorrow's our anniversary. We got married in February 2004. My beloved husband has always tried to pitch stories that I
He ignores.
I ignore.
Completely.
I tell him all the reasons that, like, that's old or it's not relevant or anyway, when he heard Audie and I were doing this in a kind of Lucille Ball trying to get into Desi Arnaz's show, he was like, I have a story to pitch. I don't know what the pitch is.
Yeah, but Mike and I are,
You're very similar.
we're very similar.
You're kind of soul.
Yeah, we both put up with Ari.
You both put up with me.
Yeah.
So he has sent in a video of a story pitch, and shall we just see
The
what it is?
pressure's on. I mean, it's not my husband.
Go Mike Gottlieb. Let's see what you got.
Okay.
Hey, Audie, have I got a story for you?
To me.
Everyone's talking about AI, and one application that's getting a lot of attention is the AI boyfriend or girlfriend. The last Surgeon General found that half of all Americans are lonely, and apparently millions of people are creating AI partners. Not necessarily as a replacement for a human partner. They may have or still want a real relationship, but the AI partner is just convenient. It's always available and attentive, and it lets people explore their emotional and romantic interests or fears
well thought
or
out.
kinks in a safe space. And it can be totally platonic. Remember that Harvard study that told us that happiness is based on your social interactions and whom you can text to say good morning to each day? This may give people another tool to fight occasional loneliness. It may be the new imaginary friend for kids, the training boyfriend or girlfriend for teens, or the private journal for adult married folks like us. Okay, I gotta go pitch some stories to my new AI companion. He always gives great advice.
Wow.
Happy
Mr.
anniversary,
Gottlieb,
Mike.
happy anniversary.
He always saves the good pitches for you.
Those are good pitches. I mean, he's more than thought. I'm surprised he didn't have a pitch deck. That
Yeah.
was like really. So here's what I'll say. We actually did an episode of The Assignment about this where we talked to a woman who had an AI companion from the organization Replica, I think. And this was a little earlier before all the stories started coming out about it and more people started using it. And I have to say, one of the things that struck me about the interview is her real live boyfriend was like sleeping in the next room. And she was telling me about this very rich relationship she was having with this artificial intelligence partner.
The question I have about this, and I do think that AI partners can be helpful as therapists, as sounding boards, et cetera. The question I have is,
I disagree.
You disagree? Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's get into it. But I
Yeah.
think the question I have is, does the AI boyfriend ever say, I think you're wrong about that,
Right.
and here's why?
That's the thing. You can do some prompt engineering and ask it to do that thing. Don't tell me that I'm right all the time, blah, blah, blah. But immediately, what are we seeing with these lawsuits from parents, from kids who have had mental health issues with AI, is that it has affirmed their worst instincts and let it spin out, spin out, spin out. And so while there are some people who for sure are like, maybe it's helpful in some contexts. I think for other people, look at a movie like Megan and they're like, yeah, it's probably what it would be. Like you don't want it to raise your kid. That's not a great idea. And I do think it has real limitations as an actual companion, but it's exploding. He is right.
What if we take it out of the romance boyfriend-girlfriend context and look at this in an elderly folks who
Yes.
lack companionship context?
And there are some experiments in that.
Yeah,
respect,
I feel like there is good here. There is also risk and danger here. And the key is calibrating it. The key is not throwing it out and condemning it.
I think I just feel like we're abdicating. Instead of
Yes,
figuring
but
out
we
those
have abdicated
problems.
already.
I know, but instead of like making sure that the elderly are not alone or like
Completely.
all that stuff, we're just kind of like, well, this robot will do it, and it just feels like, what is that solving? Because then I have to go on TV and report a bunch of stories about loneliness studies.
Right.
It's
But
like,
Bowling Alone was written how many decades ago? And these trends, as he said, have only gotten worse since then.
I know. Though the
surgeon-
irony in that book, they thought the social media and
Would
digital
fix
would bring
the problem,
us together.
and it's actually made it
yeah,
worse.
that's not how it worked
Yeah,
out.
no.
We are running out of time. There's sometimes we do a segment called Touch Grass because
Yeah.
you can see I feel really strongly about it.
Should we explain what touch grass is? Like, get off our screens.
This is Brooklyn. They know what touch
Okay.
grass is.
Okay. So here's my touch grass. I think there is a time and a place for dinner parties, and I've decided that for me in my life, 2026 is not it. What I'm doing instead, I choose a date on the calendar.
Okay.
I text 30, 40 people, and I say, potluck, Thursday the 4th, 7 p.m., bring anything.
Oh.
I don't know how many people are coming. I don't know what they're bringing. Type A people text me and say, okay, but really, do you want a salad or dessert?
So it's
and I
like
say,
an open house situation.
and it's especially because I've been traveling a lot lately. There are lots of people who I want to see and catch up with. I don't have time to make one-on-one dates with all of them. And the stress of throwing a dinner party is something I don't want to deal with right now. So instead, I build a fire in the fireplace. I make one dish. I don't know, whatever I feel like doing that
know.
day.
In
I
fairness,
don't stress
you're like
out
a
about
fancy
it.
pants cook, so I feel like you felt that pressure to like perform.
But also, people show up with Doritos and Velveeta, and it's fine. And everyone has a great time. And maybe there are 10 desserts, and maybe there are 0 desserts, and it's okay. And what's
Okay.
important is creating a space to convene and come together and build community and reducing the barriers to entry. That's my touch grass.
I love it. Thank you
What's
for not
yours?
calling it a salon. I find
Oh,
that
no,
pretentious.
nobody's reading poetry. Nobody's
Yeah,
singing
it's
their
like, get over
original
yourself.
composition. No.
All right, my touch grass thing, I had to take a note to make sure I had the right name. So J. Cole has a new album called The Fall Off. And, I'm a J. Cole fan, and some people aren't, but whatever. It's a great hip-hop album. And he is doing this thing where he is selling CD versions of the album out of his trunk.
Like just on a city street somewhere?
Yes, the way it used to be. And like, I've been chasing him around the country. J. Cole, if you see this.
Is he doing this like with a documentary film crew? Is it a stunt?
No, he's like on social media being like, hey, y'all,
I don't
I'm in
even
Silver
have
Spring.
a CD
You know
player.
what I mean?
Who has a
then-
CD player?
Slow your roll. I definitely have a CD player, and I'm one of those people. Or anybody here have like a bunch of CDs in their basement because you were like, I digitized my collection,
Hands up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you-
Yeah.
and you don't want to part ways with all of this wonderful music. And of course, now all the youngs, all the Gen Zers are like buying vinyl and buying CDs, and so I feel like we're back, baby. Like it's.
Do you think this is a trend?
Get
or
out
is
your
this just-
polishing cloths.
Is like this gonna catch on, or is J. Cole just doing this stunt?
I just like the idea, as I said, it feels like a touch grass thing.
Yeah.
Where basically you can be Harry Styles and be like, I'm doing a residency in a monstrously large place with ticket prices that are $1 billion each. Or you can get out and meet people where they are. And maybe it feels a little, I don't know, silly or throwback, but I actually don't have a problem with that. And I think hip hop needs that in this moment, just like connecting with the roots of it a little bit more. And I really appreciate it. That was my thing of the
I'm gonna
week,
go check
I
that
was
out. I'm
like,
gonna look at
yeah,
some of
follow
those-
him online, see
okay.
if he comes to your town, and then go buy a CD out of someone's trunk, the way we used to.
We have to wrap up. And Audie, I'm so happy to be reunited with
I
you. I love
know.
doing this with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, guys.